So today's animal of the week is the Southern Sea Otter, Monterey Bay's mascot. So the Southern Sea Otter, or Anhydra is considered a keystone species, and what that means is that sea otters have a disproportionately large effect on the ecosystem relative to their abundance. And this concept, the keystone species concept, was first introduced by Robert Payne. Unlike their more ancient marine mammal friends, sea otters went from a life on land to sea only 1.6 million years ago. Unlike their marine mammal friends that have blubber to stay warm, sea otters, they do not have blubber. All they have is a really nice fur coat. And that's really important because sea otters' main weak point is really their constant need to thermoregulate. So they're living in 50-degree water and they need to maintain a body temperature of 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And so they have actually really, really, really nice fur. And that really, really nice fur almost caused the entire species to go extinct because of the fur trade industry, which decimated the population until a small raft of otters was found off the coast of Big Sur. And that small raft became the foundation for the recovery of the entire species that is now 3,000 strong. Now, back to sea otter fur. They have two types of fur. They have their underfur and then their guard fur. Now, the guard fur is usually wet, the underfur is usually dry. And so, an important part of otters thermoregulating is grooming their coats. And so, in grooming, they are constantly blowing air and creating an insulating layer of air between their skin and their undercoat, keeping that part dry. So it's almost like a dry suit for a scuba diver. And so that's one of the reasons why sea otters are so vulnerable to oil spills, because if that oil gets on their coat, then that's going to mat down that layer and they'll freeze to death due to hypothermia because they won't be able to thermoregulate. And so, there's been a lot of talk about whether or not to remove sea otters from the endangered species list because there's 3,000 individuals now, but they are so vulnerable to a threat like an oil spill that there's been a lot of pushback on removing them from the endangered species list. So sea otters, they also thermoregulate by eating a ton. They can eat up to a quarter of their body weight in a single day. And so their fast metabolism also helps them thermoregulate. Now, sea otters occur along the coast of California, but where they're actually found is pretty much from Morro Bay to San Mateo County line. And the reason they're not farther south is mainly because anytime an otter, way back when there was an otter ban, anytime an otter went past Point Conception, which is around Santa Barbara, they would relocate them to the Monterey Bay area because they were worried about the sea otters affecting the abalone and crab fisheries. Now, the reason that sea otters have never expanded northward in recent history is because of what we believe to be the white shark gauntlet, where sea otters are so prone to predation by white sharks as they move past San Mateo County that they are unable to successfully recolonize where they were, which includes San Francisco Bay. And we have a recent paper that came out that shows the potential for them to recolonize San Francisco Bay and the effects that that may have. So sea otters also trigger a trophic cascade, and this was first discovered by Jim Estes, who is Mr. Trophic Cascade, and wrote a book about it in case you're interested. It's a great textbook. And basically, before Jim's work, a lot of ecologists considered ecosystems to be structured purely through bottom-up processes. So, nutrients support plants grow and support herbivores or grazers. Those grazers become prey for predators, and so on and so forth. And so it's a bottom-up process. Now, Jim kind of flipped that up on its head and said, okay, well, the otters are eating urchins. Urchins graze kelp. I'm diving in the Aleutian Islands in Alaska and seeing a whole bunch of urchin barrens where there are few or no otters anymore because of things like predation by orcas. Because, long story, but orcas switched from basically eating exclusively seals to also eating otters, and that caused a decline in the otter population. And so basically, Jim's trophic cascade was that otters eat urchins, urchins eat kelp. Therefore, by controlling the urchin populations, otters have an indirect positive effect on kelp forest cover and that work was really foundational to um, this whole field of ecology of exploring top-down effects. And there was a related trophic cascade recently discovered in Elkhorn Slough, where sea otters basically eat the predatory crabs. The predatory crabs eat these important little invertebrates called mesograzers that keep the seagrass healthy and clean of any sort of epiphytic algae, which is algae that's growing on another plant. And so, through that process, sea otters have an indirect positive effect on eelgrass or seagrass health. And so, that work was led by Brent Hughes. And so, these two examples really demonstrate how strong of an effect a keystone species like the southern sea otter can have on the ecosystems in which they inhabit. And there's been a lot of follow up studies that have looked for how universal is that effect across multiple sites and within a site, but across time. And so these are all really interesting follow-up questions that are often based on natural history observations. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed that video, and that's it.